All right, so we begin this one in regards to this is a lesson regarding how institutional discrimination perpetuates itself. Okay, and not only does institutional discrimination perpetuates itself, but it perpetuates itself without quote bad people involved. And so here's the deal. So a federal court just ruled that women can be paid less than men for doing the same job based on what their previous salaries were. Now, that doesn't sound necessarily bad when you think about that one on the first bit, because if you take out that is we're talking about males and females, right? If you just take that all out together and you say, hey, look, as an employer, I should have the right to pay someone based on their previous salaries before, versus just setting the salary all up for this particular job just in and of itself. And so now that may seem nice, but it's not. Because if you think about this, that women is not traditional, it is institutionalized sexism and discrimination that pays women less. Women get paid about 80 cents per the male dollar in the United States. Now, if you want to figure that out, if you really don't believe me on that one, because I've had people really question me on that one, Google that one, but go to United States Census. United States Census is actually the strongest data set that you can get. And if you want to do all the calculations and whatnot, if you don't believe what people are reporting and whatnot, and this is that this 80 cents to the male dollar, that actually holds up even if you take education and full-time work and the type of job. Even if you take all of that stuff into consideration, that 80 cents per the male dollar still holds up. And so anyway, but I'm going to leave that off to the side. Well, actually, no, I'm bringing this back to the center, because here's the deal, is that women are more likely to be discriminated against than basing their current salary for a new job on a past salary is actually perpetuating institutional discrimination then. Duh. But the thing is that a lot of people, they don't believe that that the institutional discrimination is there, and that the reason why women get paid less is basically their fault, that they picked the wrong major, they picked the wrong this, they picked the wrong that. It's like, no. That's not what's happening here, folks. That what's happening is institutional discrimination in the form of sexism on this regard, and that is what's leading people, the institutions, entire institutions, to not pay women what men would normally make, right? And so then, if you think about it, this actually reminds me of like the grandfather clause in regards to how, when African Americans were first set free, right? That they made a law, the grandfather law, which said that your grandfather had to be a citizen or had to be able to vote in the United, had to be able to vote in order for you to be able to vote, right? And so, well, if you just take these African Americans who have just got finished getting set free, well, they didn't have a grandfather that voted. And so even though even though the law seemed colorblind, right? It's like there's no mention of race in here at all. Even though, and as a matter of fact, that grandfather clause actually affected a lot of white people. And so if you think about it then, that this idea of institutional discrimination, how it perpetuates itself, it happens at that core, this idea that it continues to progress, that you can't just say that discrimination ends. It actually has a building effect and whatnot. And so then, but here's the deal. Here's how you do this and not have any bad people involved in this. Like, what employer wouldn't want to try to hire someone who's good for a lesser price? Who wouldn't want that to happen, right? It's like, look, my wife and I, we love sales. When we see a sale, we're all up on it, right? And so then the idea of trying to find the bargain and all of that, that's not what's wrong with the system. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the system has been set up to perpetuate the inequalities, the inequalities on an institutional level, and so that a person could actually be doing the right thing and still do the wrong thing and affect people in their everyday lives, right? And so here's some solutions here, folks. One, you can do a fixed pay scale. Now, this is actually might be a little bit harder than what it seems like. But at my job, right, I'm a professor, and so my pay is based on years of seniority and level of education. Period. That's it. That's all my pay is based on. And so that might be one route to go in order to try to do this. The second thing I would suggest is having objective measures for raises. Right? I've had people tell me this all the time in regards to like working in like customer service, and that their managers or whatever would critique on saying you're not friendly enough. And they're like, well, what does that mean? Well, look, let me just say this clearly then. If you can't explain to me if you can't objectively explain to me what the critique is, then it shouldn't have an effect, with all due respect, it shouldn't have an effect on how I get paid, right? It's like I'm not friendly enough. It's like, look, if you want to say you don't wave or smile, it's like, well, maybe that's something to think about. But if the idea is overall you're not friendly enough, well, what does that mean? How has that been documented that I'm not friendly enough? How does that go down, right? And so that's something to think about. And the last one is that you need to promote qualified females at the same rate as qualified males. Now look, if I'd have left out that qualified males part, then I would have been perpetuating sexism myself. And so I've been thinking a lot about this one, folks. But the idea is that I don't think that women or females should have the responsibility of fixing all of this stuff. What I believe, though, down to my core, is that if enough females are actually in hiring positions, right, as managers and CEOs and CFOs and all of that stuff, if they're in these positions, that they will, to whatever degree, I don't want to say naturally because there's nothing natural about this, but that they won't necessarily downplay and downgrade women and their work. And so therefore, it will ultimately eventually kind of correct itself. The thing is that we need a lot of correcting, folks, and so that's how that goes. And so anyway, look, so that's the end of this. And so if you have any comments or questions, please make sure you leave that in the section below. Right? If you like what you're hearing, make sure that you subscribe and share, and check me out at brucehoskins.com if you want to find out about more about who I am and what I do. Take it easy, y'all. Peace.